What's up, Zwifters? Welcome back to No Breakaways, your source for all the Zwift racing tips and tricks. We're back with another episode of TTT tips from Matt Gardiner. This time we're getting the masterclass. Hey Matt, what's going on, man?
Hey Rick, how's it going?
Good. Yeah, thanks for finally answering my text. Like I was trying to text you, and you're like, "Hey, I blocked your number," and I was like, "This is my burner phone." So I do really appreciate you agreeing. It only took me showing up at your doorstep.
That's not true. Not at all.
No. But yeah, so I did ask Matt to put together some more time trial tips. We had a lot of good reviews from the first one. He was kind enough to put some stuff together for us. So yeah, let's go through them. Let's check it out. So the first advanced tip Matt gave us: use alternative camera views mid-race. So let's check out what he's talking about.
So using alternative camera views mid-race is actually, it seems kind of complicated, but what I do is I have my keyboard right in front of me, and I know that if I hit 6, I look behind me like this view right here. And then later you'll see I hit 9, which is an overhead view. And I use those camera views to watch my teammates and watch myself so I don't end up gapping my teammates when I'm on the front. So like right there, I switch back to camera 1. And then I'm ending my poll here in a second. And what you'll see is I'm going to switch to the overhead view so that I can see my team file past me. And what it does is it allows me to do the sink and sprint pretty well. We're actually on kind of a climb here, so I don't really sprint all that much to get back on the train. But as you can see, I'll just slot back in right here, little surge, and I'm right back into the rotation.
So what cues are you using to decide when you're going to change your camera view? Like, is it just when you get on front or when you're ready to pull off?
It's actually more just on instinct. It depends on like the terrain. Like right there, we were kind of coming off of a descent, and I knew I had more speed than my team, so I switched to the reverse view so I could see them, just to make sure I wasn't pushing too far forward. But honestly, a lot of times I'll just use view 9 whenever I'm on the front so that I can see the first rider behind me and make sure that I keep them on my screen. Because if they're off your screen, they're out of the draft. And I think that's pretty huge to try and do. Yeah, honestly, I think there's a lot of TTTs where I've just done the whole thing in the overhead view,
Really?
especially flat ones. When you know there's not really any terrain that's going to mess with you, like just the overhead view is so nice because all you can see is the rider ahead of you and the rider behind you, and that's all you really should be focusing on anyways. Like if you are looking too far ahead, you should only worry about the wheel behind you because you need to help them stay in the draft, and you just need to stay as close to that other wheel.
Tip number 2 that Matt gave us is to rely on momentum to dictate pull changes.
So in the last video we did on the team time trial tips, one of the tips was short, strong pulls. And something like what we do is we'll pick like 30 seconds or 45 seconds for the estimated duration. But sometimes that really doesn't make sense. So what we think is important is using momentum to dictate the pull changes. So as you can see here, Holden is on the front, and I've actually unintentionally got more momentum than he does, and I rolled past him. And that's totally fine. He should just let up and let me go past because I'm going to carry the guys behind me right past him, and all he needs to do is just sprint back onto the back, and we'll keep our speed a lot higher.
Okay. Yeah, I mean I know that's something a lot of the community has been kind of wondering about. It's very hard to do like set pull changes and get people on the front. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, it's nice to be rigid and have a plan, but you really do have to be just flexible to react to changes like that, especially with like this, like on through Titans Grove, the resistance is changing all the time because of it's just extremely like rolling terrain. So that's just important to know that momentum sometimes can matter more. And then actually, another tip that we don't actually have on the list here is to be responsible for the person that's falling back. So like just there, Holden actually got gapped off the back. Since I was the last rider at the time when I noticed, I dropped back to help him get back to the team time trial line, just so that he didn't have to try and close the gap completely by himself. You got to look out for your teammates. So if you notice gaps opening, be ready to help and not slow the team down by making the front rider slow down at all.
So you're pulling back in such a way that you stay in the draft and then they can get in your draft just to make it a little.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So they don't have to sprint on. Yeah, that was something I know we did wrong. I ended up sprinting on quite a few times trying to do that sync and sprint.
Yeah, the timing is pretty difficult to nail it perfectly, but every time you practice, you're going to get a little bit better at it.
Tip number 3, practice with meetups.
So yeah, this tip, practice with meetups, is pretty important. So one of the huge things that Zwift recently put out there was the ability to make your meetups private, or so that you only see the riders in the meetup. And that's so crucial for the team time trials, because if you tried to do a team time trial practice and just like go meet on Watopia and there's thousands of riders around, like it makes it so hard because you're trying to have these perfect crisp changes, but you've got all these people that are messing with the flow of the team time trial. So it's the getting into a meetup on the course that you're going to race on is incredibly important.
Yeah. And so like, I mean, how many, obviously you practice as much as you can, but like how many practices would you say you should do? And then like when you're practicing, obviously team time trial is difficult. So would you say like back down the intensity a little bit, or how do you practice?
I would not back down the intensity at all, because I feel like the way you learn is by doing it at speed. So especially like the sink and sprint, like getting back into the TTT line after you've taken your pole, the draft is very different at 30 miles an hour versus 22 miles an hour. So if practicing it at TTT speed is pretty important, but like the way that we do it is we'll break up a practice into like 3 by 15 minutes or 2 by 20, so that you can get a rest in, kind of collect your thoughts and plan for the next effort. Otherwise, you're just doing a full gas TTT. If you just go do the course as hard as you can, you might as well just go do the race.
So tip number 4 is actually a community question we got from the YouTube comments. What do you target during your poll? All right, so kind of this question was, on the YouTube comments was, do you target watts per kilogram, or a speed? So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about it, Matt?
I would say as much as we would like to target just like a speed, it's pretty hard to know based on like the certain terrain, what speed's going to be like the best. Like here we're on the volcano, so we're actually going slower than any part of the course before. But so I think it's easiest to pick a watts per kilogram target. And typically like we choose I would say if we're pulling for 45 seconds, we might pick like an effort that's similar to like our 5-minute power, because it needs to be extremely repeatable. Every time you go to the front, you need to be able to do that power. And something above your FTP, probably close to like your 5-minute watts per kilogram, maybe a little more. That should be pretty sustainable. But you also have to keep in mind that all of your teammates have to be able to sit in. And if your 5-minute is a lot higher than your teammates, well, then you should probably pare it down a little bit so that you're not hurting them too much. Because everyone needs to be together and working as efficiently as possible. But yeah, like on the volcano, it's going to be way different. You can't just do your 5-minute power or a little more, because sitting in on an incline is a lot harder. So you need to be cognizant that your teammates need to be able to recover in your draft. So watching the terrain and the grade is pretty important as far as the consideration of your targets.
Yeah, so that brings up another point. When you do have a weaker teammate, and everybody, there's got to be somebody who's weaker. Like, how do you go out of way to protect that teammate, and what kind of like either visual or auditory cues do you need to use to do that?
I don't think you really need auditory cues, but other than just communicating on Discord, you really should be just talking to each other on Discord. And if you're hurting, tell your teammates that you're hurting and you need to ease up, or you need to take shorter pulls. As long as you're getting to the front, taking a short pull, even if it's 10 seconds, 15 seconds, that's going to be helping your team. Just don't sit up there and go below the target that you guys want, because you're going to end up slowing the team down if you're doing that. If you're trying to take 45-second pulls, but you don't have that kind of effort in you, then you should just take a shorter one.
Tip number 5, question from the community again: when to start your sprint in the sink and sprint?
So timing the sink and sprint is not necessarily going to be the same in all situations, but generally you want to start it when you're kind of shoulder to shoulder with the last rider, because if you start it before that, you're going to actually like get into their line. And so you're right here, as you can see, as Mike Cumming passes me, I actually start sprinting right as he passes me, and I just like get sucked right back onto his wheel. But if you try to start it when you're in the middle of the group, even if they're passing you pretty quickly, it's going to create a sticky draft, and they're going to get stuck behind you like instantly.
Tip number 6 is the launch, and this is about how to start your TTT. So this clip, my friend Johnny Rocket sent this over to me on how he tried to start the TTT the other day on Thursday. What he does, he has his pairing screen up, and he hits OK with 1 second to go and kind of launches out of the pens. So what do you think about this, Matt?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great way to start the TTT, especially so since he's got the pairing screen up, he's not going to be moving at all. So he can just pedal without worrying about false starting the time trial. And then he actually ramps his sprint up right before the start of the TTT and hits OK. And that just allows him to shoot off the gates. The one thing I would caution you is like, you don't want to do this unless everyone knows it's coming, because if you launch out at 10 watts per kilo and everyone else is trying to do 6, well, they're all going to have to try and catch you. So you got to be careful there.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking before, you have to, this would be another thing to practice. You have to make sure that it makes sense on your device, because it's going to be different on every device. So again, practice with Meetups, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and then also, this is something that you guys should all, as a team, like really plan and practice and execute, because if you guys can all get up to your TTT speed as fast as possible, then that's seconds gained by not having to wait to get into your TTT line, and then you can start taking your pulls and start your rotation.
All right, so that's the show for today. Matt, is there anything you want to talk about?
Well, thanks for having me on. If you can tune in to Zwift Live on Monday, we're going to be taking on the team time trial on the Magnificent 8 course, looking to implement all these tips, and hopefully we can take down Canyon Esports. We're sitting in second place right now. And last week's TTT, even though we have all this knowledge, we ended up going 5th, but we took 3 guys to the line at the end. So hopefully we can keep all 5 guys together and smash this week's race.
Yeah, and if Canyon, if you guys are watching, let me know if you want to do a tips video. You can try to one-up Saris on no breakaways too. All right, well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yep, thanks, Rick.
All right, Zwifters, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in. Special thanks to Matt Gardiner with Saris the Pro's Closet. If you liked this video, please click like and subscribe below, and let me know in the comments what you want to see next.